Hello and welcome again to episode 18 of Summit Live. It's kind of hard to believe that this is our 18th week in a row and we haven't missed one. My name is David Newmark. I am the president of Summit International Flooring. We are broadcasting to you from Whippany, New Jersey, where our headquarters are. Our platforms of the day are our website, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and soon to be IGTV. Very special show today. I have, as a guest host, I have two guest hosts. Actually, let me correct that. I have three guest hosts. The first guest host is sitting to my right, Oliver Hellawell. He is our marketing and brand manager, and we welcome him. He's normally behind the board or sitting out by his desk. We have additionally Mark Becker, who's our national sales director. He is not in the studio with us, but he's coming to you from his office. And our guest today is coming in from the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. His name is Kassra Kiarass. He's with Turner Townsend, which is a big multinational real estate and infrastructure consulting firm. He'll be joining us shortly. In fact, I see him right now. Hello there, Cass. It's good to see you.
Hi, David. Hi, Oliver. Hi, guys. How you doing?
Cass. Thank you for staying up so late. It is 10 p.m. In the UAE, and this is the first broadcast ever from there. So congratulations. You're a trendsetter, a pioneer.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us. We have Oliver, who's sitting with us today because Oliver and you have a history together. Oliver suggested that you would be a very good guest to have. Fact is, you're both British, even though you're living out in the UAE, and he's known you for years. Why don't you tell us a little bit briefly about yourself and about Turner and Townsend?
Sure, no problem. So, my name is Kassra Kiarass. I'm from the UK, born and raised. Graduated in 2012. I worked in the UK for a couple of years for an architect and FF&E consultancy before moving to the Middle East. So I did 1 year in Qatar, in Doha, and then followed by the UAE. So I've been now in the UAE for 4.5 years. And in my time in the UAE, I've worked for two firms, one being an architect firm, Gensler, which is a US-based firm. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. And recently I've moved into Turner and Townsend, as you mentioned, project management-based infrastructure and real estate company with also offices in the US, but a British firm. So.
And Kaz, so I've obviously known Kaz for a long time. We first met back in high school in the UK. So I think we're sort of 12, 13 years old, something like that. So 20 years now, right?
Correct. Yes.
But just for everyone else, what was the transition from the UK over to the Middle East in various forms is a pretty big move. What was your sort of your thinking and your goals and expectations around that? How did you end up there?
It's a good question, Ollie. Actually, funnily enough, you're the one asking me that, because part of the reason why I chose to move abroad was that I know that you were already in the West at the time. You started your career in Bermuda. So part of that transition saw, one of the close friends of mine moving abroad and showing that can be done, expanding horizons and networking. So my personal connection with the industry that I work in, which is architecture and design, kind of moved me to wanted to be in the Middle East because it's a very prominent, upcoming, vibrant place to gain experience, and almost every build is new build and at a big scale. So just to open my horizons, like Oliver did, the Middle East was almost a no-brainer for my sector.
And it was, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, when you first moved out there, it was Qatar, right? And
correct.
I think they had an Olympics coming up or a soccer World Cup, football World Cup.
Yeah, 2022 FIFA World Cup. So part of my kind of move was I moved to a local consultancy which had a number of commissions for the World Cup. So this was 2013, at the time when a lot of local and international firms based in the Middle East were bidding and pitching for the FIFA projects. Obviously, this being the first major tournament in the Middle East, you can imagine the the tenders going out was crazy. So part of that process was me getting a job to a local consultancy, which I didn't actually work on any of the FIFA projects, but I was in the office, exposed to it and working predominantly on local projects. But yeah, I did 1 year in Qatar, in Doha. That was 2013.
You know, it's a small world, and David Newmark did what you both did in the opposite direction. He went and brought another country or other countries here. So for the same reason, looking for unique and different experience, Dave saw a void in the marketplace here as far as color and design, and started going to Western Europe and making manufacturer relationships and then bringing those brands over here. So the world's gotten to be a much smaller place.
Yeah, I mean, that's an understatement, and thank you, Mark. But yeah, the world is a smaller place. I remember when I first went to Germany, my first trip. This is back when they weren't speaking too much English where I was, and the signage, there was no English at all. And I remember navigating the subways by myself, which is never easy when you're in a foreign country and alone. But yes, the world's a smaller place. Technology is amazing that we can have Kaz with us right now from the UAE. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about business and not just about our histories together.
That's actually where I was going. My actual question, sorry to interrupt, was we know what's different product-wise from Western Europe to the USA, but I'd like to hear from the international flair. What do you find different in the world of design from where you were to where you are?
It's a great question. I mean, it's a difficult question because it's almost hard. I mean, I've been here nearly, well, my Middle East experience is pushing 6 years, and it's still quite hard to put into a sentence the obvious differences. Well, the intricate differences. The obvious differences is you could say is that initial impact, because the tourist industry is so heavily and it's such a reliant kind of growth for the company, that for the country, that initial wow factor is important, and I'll get onto that maybe later on. But I think flamboyancy comes to mind. I think high grade of materials. I think quality, and certainly just always trying to kind of, the British term is keeping up with the Joneses, which is always wanting to be the best and the biggest, which I know a lot of stigma against the UAE and the Middle East is that, but I think
well, you see a lot of that in Dubai, don't you, Kaz? It's sort of, there's always the new biggest skyscraper being built and things of that nature, but you're not actually in Dubai, are you? You're in Abu Dhabi.
I'm in Abu Dhabi, yes. So Abu Dhabi is the capital. There is still the style's no different, even though Abu Dhabi and Dubai are different in sizes. But the style of design is no different. But certainly pushing the boundaries of design, and almost creating things that have not been done before. I mean, everything from Norman Foster, Zaha Hadid, and all the top architects have buildings in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai, and in the Middle East. And with these buildings comes latest technologies of facades, latest technologies of flooring, latest technologies of wall finishes and lighting. So certainly the quality is there and the wow factor is there. So you do notice the difference, particularly in design, even just spending a few days in any of the cities.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I passed through the Dubai airport once, and I just can't explain to the world just how big and beautiful and clean that airport is. Phenomenal. And it's funny you say that Dubai and UEA tries to keep building bigger and better, but a lot that we could say that as well about the United States, because
New York,
we have
sort of apartment blocks.
Yeah, big apartments, big buildings. One big building gets beat by the next big building. So I just think that's a trend with some countries of which we're too. Tell us about the differences, if you would, about between what's going on in Europe, where you're from, and the Middle East in terms of design.
Well, So if I want to go technical, the kind of the office standards for design follows both international standards and British standards here in the Middle East. So AIA, RIBA, qualified architects mostly are registered here in the UAE. So if someone isn't British, they'll most likely lean towards the AIA accreditation and the international standards that comes with that. So if you look at technicalities, similar. I think it's just more when it comes to that final finish and the look and feel of what that building is would be the difference. I mean, the bones and the skeleton, you could say, breeze block, blockwork, and drywall. These are just the formalities of architecture. But what perhaps is the difference is the finishes, the materials, but also how kind you are on space. So I know a lot of capitals, cities in Europe, space per cost per square meter is quite expensive. But here in Abu Dhabi, you see atriums, you see lobbies in hotels of double and triple height spaces. Space is very kind. The average hotel room is 35, 45 square meters. So the functionality is not necessarily different, but the way in which it's perceived is different, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so the framework and the safety side of things from an architectural perspective is using the same international and
same standards. Exactly. Of
but
course.
It's more a taste and a style difference, right? So can you are you in a position to, I don't know if any of these are confidential, but projects that you've been working on in the past or you're working on now, and perhaps give us some idea of some of these stylistic touches and materials that.
Sure, I can talk about previous projects I worked on a couple of years ago, a shopping mall, an iconic shopping mall, a brand in the Middle East, which started in Kuwait, and the one that I worked on was in Bahrain. And it's a new concept of shopping malls, and actually the influence came from the style of shopping in the US. If you look at kind of the Avenue Strip, and the concept behind it was because the weather and the humidity and the climate is quite harsh here, harsh in the sense that it's quite hot and you're not much spent outside. The concept was to create an outdoors feeling inside the mall. So this mall's idea was a lot of theming. So you've got GRG or GRC type construction, glass reinforced concrete and glass, to create a theming as if to see something you would get in the US or Europe. So the Juliet balconies, the types of framework, but all within an air-conditioned closed space. This is quite popular.
We actually had a show last week talking about bringing the outside in, so that's quite
Mark can elaborate on this, but just last week we had a vendor on of ours that makes artificial turf, and the concept was bringing the outdoors indoors.
Yeah.
And what made it different is that it was the vendor that we work with is out of Holland, and their turf does not look like just plain green turf that looks like what's the cheapest thing I can put on my stoop or on a miniature golf course, but it's a very realistic grass looking product. And if any of the designers that are watching are listening to what Kaz is saying and are interested in what's new and what can be done for wow factor, that's what Summit does. We have product that you would think in a mature industry like carpeting, for example, what could possibly ever be new? And recently we've come with object carpet with carpets that have no bitumen, no PVC, and no latex. So they're healthy for the indoor environment. We do have the product from Holland that makes a real grass look on the inside. We have products that are really technologically advanced and are still considered resilient flooring or carpeting. But if you want that wow factor and the pop, we look for color and textures that don't exist, just like you're looking for new, unique, and technologically forward product and design idea. That's what we do. It's very interesting to hear you saying these things and thinking about the overlap of what Summit offers.
Hey, Mark. We lost Kaz.
Hello?
I believe.
Can you hear me?
We hear you, but we don't see
I've
you.
lost sound.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Can you hear us, Kaz?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Hello, back to you. Hello.
can't hear you.
Okay.
No, I can hear you, just can't see you.
Hello?
Okay, so Kaz does not know that we hear him.
Well, I suppose while we're
Hopefully he will reset himself. This is the beauty, Alan, if you would, to this. This is the beauty of our live stream. You just never know what you're going to get. And right now we have no guest.
Hello.
can hear you, Kaz.
Okay. This is a small problem because he keeps going hello and he doesn't hear us. We were going to ask Kaz a couple of questions.
I can see you guys. Can you guys hear me? Can you see me?
Yes. Can you hear us, Kaz?
Okay. So I think
It's all good. I think, Cass,
everything's working my side.
We hear
your
you, but we
insight is
cannot
better than
see you.
yours.
Kaz, do you hear us? Okay.
Well, they deal with a lot of airports, right? So what about high traffic, carpet that,
Okay.
that we might be able to offer?
Yeah, I'll tell you, one of the things that I was going to speak briefly about is one of the products that we have, which is called Freestyle. Freestyle is by Object Carpet. Object Carpet makes carpet, but in this case, this is more of a resilient flooring that can be used in the heaviest areas. Alan is showing right now a piece of it. It's incredibly durable. It's a very low profile, high pattern. It's easy to install. You can put these carpet tiles in pretty much any way without worrying too much about, you don't have to worry at all about how it's installed. And that would have been something we would like to have brought up in this conversation. Anyway.
Sorry, David. Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, we hear you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. I can see you. So everything's fine my side. I don't know if
Okay.
it's
Well, we
just
don't
don't have
see you,
video
but
for
that's
you.
okay.
That's okay.
right.
Let-
Okay.
Tell us, if you would, while we have you, before we lose your sound, which I'm worried about,
Yeah.
what's
Sure.
going on with COVID-19 in the UAE? How are people reacting? Are people completely depressed? Is everybody working inside? I mean, I don't want to get into what's going on here, but I'm
Sure.
curious what's going on there.
No, I think so. One, and this is almost a cultural thing, but quite often when something's announced, everyone's very well behaved, and I think they dealt with it well, maybe too well, to the point where the kind of post-COVID transition is very, very slow. But I think it's almost following suit to what other countries are doing. I know when the UK went into lockdown initially in April, the UAE followed a month later. But right now, projects have slowed down, like you would expect. Whether they've gone on hold, whether funding has stopped due to clients pulling out, or just whether they've just continued but at a reduced pace. I can tell you the current project that I'm working on, which is an aviation project here in Abu Dhabi, it has slowed down and anticipated to slow down. And rightfully so, because the opening very much relied on the footfall to cover the costs of the opening. So if you're not getting that traffic, you can't afford to open. So it's kind of hand in hand. So yeah, the answer to the question is, as expected, it's slowed down. I think the question that a lot of people are asking is, what is that roadmap? When does things start getting normal? Is this the new normal? So that's quite challenging. And another thing from a business acumen point of view, I heard this from my managing director that companies are desperate and they're going in at such ridiculously low rates to win projects that is actually becoming quite challenging to compete with as an international firm, which perhaps can afford to continue, have to compete with those companies struggling, going in at lower rates.
So that's when consulting companies are pitching for projects, or you're saying architect firms, or all of the above?
Well, I'm speaking from a consultancy point of view. So we offer project cost and risk management services, but just from also my architectural contacts, just going in at bids with local firms who have no choice but to go in at low bids, it means that they'll always win the projects. And this is a bit of a kind of issue that's started to arise on the back of a COVID issue.
You're still making large spaces, open floor plans. The design element hasn't changed. Just the speed of work is changing.
Sure. I think it's still a little bit early to distinguish what direction design will go in. I know that often the argument is cellular versus open plan offices, and as a designer myself, we encourage open plan. It is socially healthier, it's easier to design. But will this mean that cellular type design will go back? The kind of classic the 80s office setup with the divisions and partitions. Yeah, or people have their own offices. Certainly in the Middle East, and this is more of a kind of hierarchical thing, that people do prefer their own offices. It's almost a statement that I'm here and you're there. But that might now be a norm with the idea of social distancing. So this is certainly something that I think will come into topics during design. So that's certainly a challenge.
Well, a related topic that I wanted to ask you about was with COVID-19. I know you're a keen gym goer, and yes. Mark is here in our team. I used to be when I was a little younger.
Oh, don't give Mark too much credit, please.
But what's the situation with gyms over in the UAE? Is that part of the reopening plan? Are they now open again?
They're open. They're only by booking. Every other machine has a kind of X across it.
For the social distancing part.
There's someone at the door checking your temperature when you're going in. I think it's just standard practice.
It's similar to here.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing as here.
So basically, Cass, your plans are planning for when there's a vaccine and all engines forward, just like you have been. COVID is something we deal with today, but you expect that it will likely at some point be eradicated and design will go on like it has been.
One would like to hope, but again, it's hard to judge. I mean, it's snowballing. A couple of months ago, you think it will be done now, and then now it's like you think it will be done at Christmas, and then it just the goalposts keep moving. So it will be a challenge for designers, certainly to try and put a finger on what is the correct way to go about design from here on. I think cost saving is certainly going to be a factor moving forward. Clients, consultants will certainly be more frugal when it comes to spending. With the you don't know what's around the corner anymore, and that's always now in the back of your mind.
There's no question that you don't know what's around the corner. We talk about this pretty much on a daily basis here as well. And for what it's worth, we're also concerned. The margins that we work at are considerably tighter now than they've been, and it's a crazy world. We only could hope and pray that it gets back to some normalcy soon.
I think one thing that's perhaps prohibited a lot of business is because the Middle East, and particularly UAE, it's such a small city. Actually, when you compare it to the cities in the US or the Europe, Abu Dhabi and Dubai are small cities, but the powerhouse of construction is quite large. So as you can imagine, you've got this small city producing a lot of construction. So networking and social events is so popular when it comes to kind of introducing people to others. When I was working at Gensler, we have a preferred vendors list of subconsultants and suppliers that we used to work with, and often engineers and architects will team up together to go for the same bids as partners. And obviously, in order to become a preferred vendor, it would be through networking and other types of events, whether it's happy hour 5 to 9 in the hotels, or whether it's a business golf session on a Wednesday afternoon. All these things came together really, really conveniently in the Middle East because it's so small and, as explained, a lot of construction. So with the social distancing coming in now, these things start to become more apparent, and
that network elements no longer a viable sort of marketing approach for architects and the like. And it's the same here, and that's one of the reasons we built this studio, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're here in the studio because this is the only way to reach our customer base and to get our information across, our product information, our knowledge. So this is the new way for now.
But
And
the
thank
kind of
goodness.
point, sorry, the point I wanted to make was I think moving forward now, I think brand will become more important than ever, because with the networking and the social kind of gatherings out of the way, if you're wanting to pick your sub-consultants, your suppliers for projects, without knowing them, you will just go to what the best brand is, because that knowing them has been removed, that kind of networking aspect. So a lot of a lot of suppliers have satellite offices in the Middle East as people on the ground when they're using projects. And that means that, startups won't be able to do that. It'll only be the ones that are already established.
The incumbent big brands, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, we like to distinguish between big brands and quality brands, because big brands have a lot of machines. They have to keep their machines running, so they're spitting out commodity product as quickly as they can make it. Whereas quality luxury brands like ours, it's not the price, it's the value. When you have a really low profile woven carpet, will last until you want to change the paint on the walls. So it's not just price, but it's what's going to last the longest, not going to landfill, what's going to meet the design theme to the project, and what's got the highest value, not just necessarily what's the cheapest product. What's going to last will, in fact, be a better value for the end user than what they may have to replace. And remember, when you replace flooring, that's a major disruption to a business.
Sure.
Especially in big infrastructure projects, I guess, like Kaz mentioned, airports and sort of grand shopping malls and things. Having to change the flooring in those kind of environments could be very disruptive.
Having to funnel foot traffic one way or another, it's a major disruption. So we are working at lower margins trying to get those projects, but we would implore the designers that do watch our show, stick with value product, not just cheap product. Get that wow factor, make that statement, and do it with something that will, in the long run, save the client money. Anyway, I'm off the soapbox, but that's my self-serving speech for Summit for the day.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Kaz, we'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your day and actually your night. I'm sorry we've had technical difficulties where we've lost your video feed. Fortunately, we kept the audio and we were able to hold on to this program. Thank you so much for coming here. We'll try this again, maybe down the road. Thank you for the commercial perspective of what's going on in the Middle East. And we look forward to speaking with you in the future.
Yeah, guys, thank you for having me on your episode. It's been great, and no problem staying up. It's no problem at all. And Oliver, David, and thank you very much. It's been great.
You're very welcome. Mark, I thank you too for joining us.
Thanks, Mark.
Oliver, thank you. And I'd like to talk to you about next week now. At this point, let's talk about next week's show. We are this time coming to you from the United States, so with any luck, our technical difficulties will be minimized. We have a roundtable-like program next week where we're bringing in Defined ID from Austin, Texas. They are a residential as well as a commercial design firm. And joining us last minute, and I greatly appreciated, because we did have a scheduling glitch, will be Interiors by Donna Hoffman, based in the Philadelphia area. Thank you to Sandy, Donna's right arm, we'll say, for putting this together so quickly. We look forward to both firms joining us next week. We're going to talk about design within the United States and how the different regions look at design differently from a residential point of view. Anyway, thank you for joining us. We will be back next week at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. If you have any suggestions for Summit, you could email us at info@summit-flooring.com or call us at 1-877-496-3566. Thank you, Alan Smith, as always, for working the board. Thank you, Oliver, for being our co-host this week. Thank you, Mark Becker, also for joining us. And I neglected to introduce, as always, our co-host, who is a little under the weather today, Rocco. He got a haircut and he seemed to have developed a cough this morning. Right now he's coughing. So we will look forward to seeing everybody next week, 2 p.m. Eastern. Thank you. Everybody stay safe and stay healthy.